Infrastructure actually sweeps in an enormous amount of domestic communications as well. The same switches that carry our international traffic carry our domestic traffic. Who could ever manage to collect and perhaps even analyze that amount of data? But the fact is, that's exactly what the NSA has been doing for decades outside of the United States.
And now, Bankston says, inside the United States as well. According to Mark Klein, the secret room at AT&T contains gear which enables the government to look at every individual message on the internet and analyze exactly what people are doing. Here's another document. It mentions a company called Nuremburg. Nuremburg makes computer software that can swallow and analyze 10 gigabytes of information every second. That means it could go through all the information in all the books in the Library of Congress in a little over 15 minutes.
Most insurance companies use customer zip codes as the most important factor in setting premiums. They argue that low-income zip codes equal high crime and higher liability. If I'm living on this side of the street, good neighborhood, what am I likely paying?
Somewhere around $1,400.
Okay, and if I'm living over there?
Oh, $2,300.
But California's insurance commissioner, John Garamendi, says it's unfair to the poor.
The use of zip codes clearly harms certain communities. We're talking poor people, we're talking minority people.
Discrimination?
Flat out discrimination.
This area of Los Angeles could be any low-income neighborhood in the country. The bottom line is the poor pay inflated prices for almost everything. Car and home insurance, mortgages, even food. So we're talking thousands of dollars.
Potentially thousands of dollars.
Per year.
Per year.
And Matt Fellows of the Brookings Institution says low-income Americans are being punished for being poor, using as evidence the results of his recent study. Drivers from lower-income neighborhoods pay up to $1,000 more per year in car insurance premiums than those in higher-income areas. 4.2 million poor people pay higher than average prices for mortgages by switching zip code.
We moved from 90745 to 90008.
Her car insurance company increased her premium by more than $1,700.
No accidents, no tickets, nothing changed except that we moved about 11 miles from our other address.
If you could buy a $250,000 or $300,000 house, you're going to get some great public education.
But most everyone else is stuck with what the government gives you.
Been in a public school system, no matter how much you complain about it, no matter how much you cry about what's going on with your children are stuck because of their zip code.
All at Sutherland Global Services. It's a call center with about 1,500 local workers.
If you saw an AT&T wireless commercial on TV, picked up the number, and dialed the 800 number, you're talking to us.
Now, ultimately, the unionization effort at Sutherland failed. We'll certainly keep you posted on the results of that appearance with the Labor Board.
Klein had spent 22 years working at AT&T in San Francisco as a technician, one of the faceless backroom union technicians who keep the phone lines and the internet connections running.
One day the site manager told us that we would be getting a visit from an agent of the National Security Agency.
From the NSA?
From the NSA. It was very explicit.
The NSA, headquartered outside Washington, D.C., is the country's most secret intelligence agency, in charge of intercepting electronic communications around the world.
And it was strange to me that the NSA would be in a AT&T office to begin with, because it was my understanding, going back to the 70s, that they do foreign interception, not domestic.
But Klein says he soon began to hear about a secret room being built on the 6th floor of this AT&T building, connected to cables for both foreign and domestic internet traffic. This is a picture Klein says he took of the room.
After I studied it a bit, I realized what they had done.
Klein says the documents show how the NSA had installed what is known as a splitter in the secret room, connected to the trunk lines of 16 other major phone and internet companies.
And the purpose was to make copies of all the internet traffic going through the fiber optic cables, all of it. This is domestic traffic as well as international traffic. All of it that went through the splitter was copied and sent to the secret room.
So in a sense, they are vacuuming up, scooping up
they are blindly vacuuming up everything going across those links.
And you're certain of that?
I'm certain of that. That's the physical arrangement. There's no dispute about it.
You saw that?
I saw that. I looked at the cables. I traced the cables. I know where they went. The documents show where they go. They go to the secret room.
But Klein says it wasn't until he saw President Bush speak about his administration's surveillance program that he decided to go public.
And I'm watching all this, and I'm getting angrier and angrier.
Making calls into the United States or out of the United States, we want to know what they're saying.
It tried to make you think it was about phone calls. But a lot of it is also about the internet. And it's about gobs and gobs of information going across the internet. It affects everybody. And that's the part that they haven't let out.
He first went to one of the top reporters at the Los Angeles Times, turning over all the AT&T documents he had collected.
And suddenly he told me on the phone one day, it's delayed, while our top guy at the LA Times is going to have a meeting about this with the then National Director of National Intelligence, John Negroponte. After this meeting with the government, the story was killed.
The Los Angeles Times confirms it was contacted by John Negroponte and then NSA Director Michael Hayden, now the director of the CIA. The decision to kill the story was made by then Times editor Dean Baquet, and a civil liberties group, the Electronic Frontier Foundation, filed suit against AT&T, using Mark Klein's heavily redacted account as evidence of what he called an illegal and dangerous Orwellian project.
You start taking everybody's emails, you've crossed the line as far as I'm concerned.
The NSA will not confirm or deny the existence of the secret rooms.
He's the 100-meter world record holder, and wait a minute, flat out, he admitted it to the grand jury that he used human growth hormone.
Well, he described Mr. Conti and a doctor that Conti had a relationship with, writing phony prescriptions for stimulants for athletes. It was so eye-opening.
Among them, Bonds, fellow baseball all-star Jason Giambi, and Olympic gold medalist track star Tim Montgomery. The appearance of Bonds, just named the National League's most valuable player for the third year in a row, raised the stakes and inspired a national dialogue that went all the way to Washington.
The use of performance-enhancing drugs like steroids in baseball, football, and other sports is dangerous, and it sends the wrong message. So tonight I call on team owners, union representatives, coaches, and players to take the lead, to send the right signal, to get tough, and to get rid of steroids now.
The only way you get any traction against the problem is exposing the drug cheats.
Whether these guys want to admit it, they're role models. And the reality is there's clearly a trickle-down effect. If the message, implicit or explicit, from Major League Baseball or others is, you know what, we're going to accept the use of these drugs in sports, and it's just part of the deal, we just want to be entertained, then the message will be to teenagers that, hey, this is okay, this is what you need to do to compete, and so be it. That just can't be a good message.
March 17, 2005, 4 months after the Bonds and Giambi transcripts were published, the House Government Reform Committee held hearings on the abuse of steroids in baseball. Some of the sport's biggest names testified: Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa, Rafael Palmeiro.
Americans really care about baseball. Bonds is the home run king. This is his hometown, and we were, delighted to have the opportunity to report on that true information.
Giants fans didn't seem quite as delighted, and they still aren't.
In fairness to Barry, I feel like when he went before the grand jury, he should have had the assumption of confidentiality.
I think this whole thing from the start has pretty much been a witch hunt for, kind of the star players, the highest profile players.
Were we unpopular with some Giants fans as a result of this story? Absolutely. Some of the responses we got were quite aggressive.
Oh, I mean, it ranges from, crawl back into the hole you crawled out of, to you bleep and bleep and bleep and bleep.
Believe me, and I'm a firm believer, if you want to maintain your illusions about things, people should maintain their illusions about things. Keep believing there's a Wizard of Oz. But, I also believe, because I'm in this profession, I believe in the profession, that people ought to know sometimes if it's just the guy behind the curtain. And then they can keep believing in the wizard if they want.
It was the revolutionary experiment that showed what could lead ordinary people to perform unthinkable acts. Now,